1943. A rail siding in occupied France. Past midnight, a German sentry walks his beat along the platform, boots loud on the gravel, rifle slung, cigarette cupped against the cold. He is not afraid. Why would he be? He guards a depot deep inside German-held Europe, behind 100 miles of barbed wire and checkpoints and informers. Any shot fired here brings the whole garrison running with dogs and lights inside 2 minutes. 40 yards away, in the black under the trees, a man lies still and watches him. In the man's hands is the ugliest gun of the war, a length of pipe, a wire stock bent like a coat hanger, a fat metal tube bolted over the front where a barrel should be. It looks like something welded together in a garage by someone who had never seen a real weapon. The sentry turns at the end of the platform and starts back. The man in the trees lets out a slow breath and squeezes once. There was a sound, but it was not a gunshot. It was a flat, soft click, the noise a stapler makes, swallowed almost at once by the wind. The sentry folded onto the gravel and did not get up. No echo rolled across the yard. No dog barked. No light came on. The garrison slept on, 200 yards away, and never knew their man was dead. The British had taken the cheapest, crudest, most laughed-at gun of the entire war and turned it into the quietest killer in Europe. This is how they did it. To understand the trick, you first have to understand the joke. And the Sten gun was a joke. Soldiers said so out loud. When France fell in 1940, Britain stood almost alone and almost unarmed. At Dunkirk, the army had left its weapons on the beaches. Whole divisions came home with the clothes they wore and little else. After that retreat, the stockpiles left on the home island were barely enough to arm 2 divisions properly. An invasion was expected within weeks. Britain needed submachine guns by the hundreds of thousands, and it needed them now, and it had no money and no spare factories to make them. The American answer was the Thompson, a beautiful gun, machined from solid steel, walnut furniture, a work of art. It cost around $200 a piece in those years, and every one had to cross the Atlantic through waters thick with German submarines. Britain could not wait and could not pay. So 2 designers, a man named Shepard and a man named Turpin, were told to build a submachine gun that any workshop in the country could stamp out of sheet metal. Take the first letters of their names, Shepard and Turpin, add the N from Enfield, and you get the name, Sten. What they built was barely a gun at all. It was a steel tube with a bolt inside and a spring behind it. The whole thing was pressed and welded out of flat sheet steel by people who made bicycle parts and toys and tin cans. Only 2 pieces, the bolt and the barrel, were properly machined. Everything else was bent metal and welds. It had no wooden stock. Just a loop of wire or a single steel strut for a shoulder. The magazine stuck out the left side at a right angle, and it jammed if you so much as breathed on it wrong. Men called it the plumber's nightmare, the stench gun. There was even a bitter little joke that it had been made by Marks & Spencer out of Woolworth, 2 cheap British shops, because that is exactly what it felt like in your hands. It went off when you dropped it. It jammed when it felt like it. And it cost about $11 to make. $11 against the Thompson's $200. The British had answered German engineering with a stamped tin pipe, and everyone who held one knew it. They built around 2.5 million of just the Mark II version. They poured out of Britain by the millions. And here is the thing nobody mocking the price understood yet. The very cheapness that made it a joke was about to make it the perfect secret weapon. Because there was a problem that no expensive, beautiful gun could solve. The problem of killing quietly behind enemy lines. By 1942, Britain was running a secret war inside occupied Europe. It had a name most people had never heard. The Special Operations Executive, the SOE. Winston Churchill had handed it one order, and the order was to set Europe ablaze. These were not regular soldiers. They were agents, dropped by parachute into France and Norway and Yugoslavia and Poland, often alone, often at night, carrying a false name and a suicide pill. Their job was sabotage. They blew rail lines off their beds. They dropped bridges into rivers. They cut telephone cables, wrecked power stations, and crippled the factories the Germans had turned to their own war machine. They armed and trained the local fighters, the French Maquis chief among them, the farmers and clerks and railwaymen who had decided to fight back. And the tools of that secret war were built in a secret place. North of London, near the village of Welwyn, stood a quiet country house called the Fryth. Before the war, it had been a hotel. Now it was Station 9. And behind its walls and in the cabins scattered across its grounds, scientists and craftsmen built the strangest weapons of the entire conflict. They built a tiny folding motorcycle for paratroopers. They built a single-shot pistol so quiet it was made for one purpose only, walking up to a man and killing him without a sound, and they called it the well rod. Almost every device born there carried the same prefix, well, stamped like a signature. And it was here, among these men, that one officer was handed the hardest problem of all. Take the cheapest gun in the British arsenal and make it silent. Here is why that wall kept stopping them, mission after mission. The sentry, the lone guard on the bridge, the watchman at the gate of the factory they had come to destroy. One man standing between an agent and the target. They could not just shoot him. A normal gunshot is a violent thing. A standard pistol or submachine gun firing in the dark throws a sound that carries for more than a mile across open country. Fire one shot to drop a sentry, and you bring the entire garrison down on your head before the body hits the ground. The mission dies, and so does everyone on it. For centuries, the answer to a sentry had been the knife and the garrote, and the SOE took that seriously. In the hills of western Scotland, near a village called Arisaig, they ran a school that taught agents to kill with their hands. Two former Shanghai policemen ran it, Fairbairn and Sykes, a pair so feared and so alike that the recruits nicknamed them the Heavenly Twins. They had spent years breaking up knife fights in the worst streets in the world, and they had boiled everything they knew down to a course they called, plainly, silent killing. They even designed a dagger for it, a thin double-edged blade meant to slip into the side of the neck and stop a man before he could shout. But think about what that asked of an agent. It meant crossing an open courtyard in the dark, closing to arm's length with a trained, armed soldier, and betting your whole mission on getting both hands on him before he made a single sound. Many men died, trying. The knife worked, but it was a coin flip every time. What the SOE wanted was a way to change that math. A gun that could kill a man from across the yard, from the safety of the shadows, without making a sound a second sentry could hear. And to build it, they reached for the cheapest gun they had. Here is why that choice was genius, not desperation. To silence a gun, you have to fight two different noises, and most people only know about one of them. The first noise is the blast, the bang of burning gas exploding out of the muzzle behind the bullet. The second noise is the bullet itself. A normal pistol bullet flies faster than sound. It breaks the sound barrier the instant it leaves the barrel and drags a tiny sonic boom, a sharp crack, all the way to the target. You can muffle the blast all you want. If the bullet is still going faster than sound, it will still crack like a whip the whole way down range. Anyone who has ever silenced a gun has had to beat both noises, and the second one is the hard one. The standard Sten round, the same 9mm pistol cartridge the gun already fired, left a normal barrel at around 1,060 feet per second. That is faster than sound. That round would always crack, no matter what you bolted on the front. So the men at Station 9 did something clever to the gun itself. They cut the barrel short and they drilled holes through the side of it. The moment the cartridge fired, a portion of the hot gas bled sideways out through those holes before the bullet had even left the gun. The bullet got a weaker push. It came out the muzzle slower than it ever had before, slow enough to fall below the speed of sound. No crack. The sonic boom was gone, killed before it could start. That solved the second noise. Now for the first. Over the whole front of the gun, over the short-ported barrel, they fitted a fat metal tube. Inside it was an expansion chamber and a stack of baffles, metal discs the gas had to fight its way through. All that hot, screaming gas, instead of slamming out into the open air in one sharp bang, was forced to slow down, to cool, to wind its way through the maze of baffles and leak out the far end soft and spent. The blast was tamed, but cutting the barrel and bleeding off gas left less force to work the gun. A submachine gun runs on that pressure. The bolt is hurled backward by it, then a spring slams it forward again to load the next round. Take too much pressure away and the bolt will not move, and you have a single shot weapon that jams after every round. So they fixed that too. They lightened the bolt itself and they softened the spring behind it, so the weaker pulse of gas was now exactly enough to throw the lighter bolt back and chamber the next round. The whole machine was rebalanced around having less power to work with. Every piece of it fit together. Ported barrel to kill the crack, baffled tube to kill the blast, lighter bolt and softer spring to keep it firing anyway. They called it the Sten Mk IIS. The S stood for special. Suppressed tests had run through the summer of 1942, and by 1943, the thing was in the field. The plumber's pipe had become something the world had almost never seen. A near-silent machine gun. And it worked better than anyone dared hope. The men who tested it could barely believe their ears. There was no bang. The only thing left was a faint mechanical click, the bolt going forward, the action working. Out at 200 yards, a listener heard, at most, a soft tick and thought nothing of it. So they sent it to war in the dark. The SOE and the British Commandos took the Mk IIS behind the lines into exactly the work it was built for, and the gun changed the whole arithmetic of the raid. No more coin flip in the courtyard. An agent could now drop the guard on the bridge from across the yard, from the trees, from the dark, and leave nothing behind but a sound like a dropped book. The man who had spent weeks at Arisaig learning to kill with a knife now had a tool that let him do it from 40 yards away without ever touching the body until it was already down. They scoped the gun honestly. At night, in a covert killing, it was trusted out to around 50 yards. In daylight, you might stretch it to 75. This was not a battlefield rifle reaching across a valley. It was a close, quiet tool for a close, quiet job, and inside that range, it was deadly and almost invisible. And then it went out to the resistance, in numbers, falling from the night sky. This is where the cheapness paid off twice over. Because the Sten was small and crude and easy to hide, the Allies could afford to scatter it across a continent. Night after night, RAF Special Duties bombers, Halifaxes and Sterlings stripped for the work, flew low over occupied fields and pushed out long steel canisters under parachutes. Some canisters were built for rifles, long and rigid. Others split into sections a single fighter could grab and run with. Inside were Stens, ammunition, explosives, radios, the whole kit of a secret army dropping onto torchlit fields marked out by agents on the ground. To the Polish Home Army, the Armia Krajowa, the Sten became almost a national weapon. They received airdropped guns, yes, but they did something no other resistance in Europe matched. They built their own. In hidden workshops across occupied Poland, in cellars and back rooms, Polish underground craftsmen hand-copied the simple stamp design and turned out more clandestine Stens than any other resistance movement on the continent. When the city of Warsaw rose against its German garrison in 1944, Sten guns, dropped and homemade both, were in the hands of the fighters in the rubble. Think about what that meant. The very thing that made the Sten a joke to a trained soldier, its crudeness, its simplicity, was the thing that let it be copied by a watchmaker in a basement and trusted to a teenager who had never held a gun. You could not hand-build a Thompson in a cellar. You could build a Sten. The suppressed version, too, is reported in the hands of American OSS agents who worked the same secret war from the other side of the alliance. But it was not a magic wand, and the men who carried it knew exactly where it would betray them. The silence had a price, and the price was heat and wear. The whole trick depended on those baffles inside the tube, and the baffles were fragile. Every round that tore through them battered them and burned them a little more. The gun was built to be fired one shot at a time, or at most in tiny bursts. Hold the trigger down and let it rip on full automatic, the way you could with a normal Sten, and you would destroy your own silencer. The baffles would wreck themselves under that kind of fire. The one thing that made the gun special was the first thing to break if you used it wrong. Full automatic was for one situation only, the moment a quiet job had already gone loud and an agent was fighting his way out. And the tube got hot, hot enough to burn the hand holding it. So they wrapped a canvas cover around the suppressor, a sleeve so the operator could grip the front of the gun without searing his palm. Even with it, the men were trained to the same hard discipline. One shot, make it count. Wait, do not chatter. Treat the trigger like it costs you something, because it did. That was the deal the suppressed Sten offered. Perfect silence, but only if you had the nerve to fire just once and trust it. Squeeze the trigger like a rifleman, not like a man with a machine gun, and it would carry you. Panic and hold it down, and it would turn loud and ordinary at the worst possible moment. So here is the strange truth at the heart of it. The Sten was the most mocked weapon of the war, a stamped pipe, an $11 gun, a thing soldiers swore was made by Marks and Spencer out of Woolworth. It went off when you dropped it. It looked like a joke welded together from scrap. And from that joke, the British built the quietest killer in occupied Europe. A weapon that let one man, lying in the dark 40 yards from a German sentry, end a life with no more noise than a click in the wind, and walk away into the trees while the garrison slept on. The men who mocked it were not wrong about what it looked like, They were only wrong about what it could do. The plumber's nightmare, the cheapest gun of the war, became the last sound a great many German sentries ever almost heard. A faint click in the dark, and then nothing at all.